Hello and welcome into the latest live stream, and my name is Kerry Holzman. And if you're joining me for the first time, welcome. And for those of you that are regulars, welcome back. Let's just do an audio video check. If you guys could just let me know in the chat room that you can see and hear me okay. You should see me in 1080p. So I'm just going to wait for a moment while I wait for that. Wow, that was quick. Thank you guys for confirming. I do try and get everything set up right the first time every time, and I always seemingly forget something. And when if I eventually get a studio, this will be a step I don't have to do because I'll just leave it all hooked up. So the update for the Intel exploit has been released. The meltdown and the one that affects AMD2 is Spectre. That was released today, and just as I predicted, there's been absolutely no performance hit whatsoever. So some companies may be affected by it. You know, what comes to mind is like Amazon Web Services. But, and just to clarify, if Amazon Web Services were to receive the maximum performance hit of 30%, they would very easily just put 30% more computers into use. And then they could sue Intel after the fact. But when a company's losing money, the company will do what it needs to do. It won't affect me or you. So that's why I say it's not a problem you need to worry about. I'm sorry, I'm really thirsty. Today, I'm going to continue on a diagnostic that I had started with this machine here. And this computer was built back in 2011. The solid state drive was installed in 2013. And it was running good until they had turned it off on a Friday. They came in on a Monday to turn it back on, and it wouldn't turn on. And this customer is a I provide managed services to this client, and I instruct them. I'm basically their IT department, right? So I make rules and policies. They pay me to make rules and policies, the boss does, to ensure his company stays up and running. Now, getting the employees to follow those rules and policies, you know, I'm not there at the office to enforce the rules. So the employees, if they don't follow the rules and policies I put into place, the only ones who are going to suffer are themselves. So I've always instructed my retainer customers that I am their IT department to leave their machines on 24/7 and you know, reboot them from time to time, but otherwise just leave them on. That way I can access them remotely after hours and on weekends and do all the maintenance, make sure the antivirus is running, updates are installed, et cetera, et cetera. Well, they go home and enjoy their evening or their weekend. When they come back on Monday, the computer's all been updated and they don't even realize it. And I love that. Well, this customer decided they were smarter than me, or the rules didn't, I don't know. Look, I don't know. It's a nice person. I don't want to insult them. They're nice. I really like this person. I don't understand what's going through their mind other than they just don't care. So anyway, they turned the computer off on a Friday. They turned it on a Monday. It didn't work. And then this customer violated my second rule, which is you don't put any data that's important on your computer's hard drive. You must put it over to the server because these individual workstations do not get backed up. Well, this customer did not follow those rules, and as a result, needed me to retrieve some files. You know, they could easily go to another machine at the office to continue working, but they didn't have the files they were working on. So I was trying to put my foot down, but at the same time be nice about it. And basically let them know that it was going to take me several hours to get the data off the drive because I had to finish up what I was doing, and then I had to set up this computer, pull the drive, put it into a docking bay, hook up another computer, locate the files, transfer the files, maybe even have to take ownership of the directory before I could even see the files. And this is very time consuming. And it was all avoidable if they had just selected to save onto their network drive instead of on their local drive. And I said, you know, basically what I said was, because you didn't do what I've asked you to do, you've now created a bunch of work for me that was completely avoidable, and it's inconvenienced you because you will not be able to go back to work on that document until I have time to retrieve the documents for you and then email them to you. And then they apologized. They said, look, I didn't realize it was that big of a deal. And I said, well, now we know, and let's hope moving forward, you through this experience, you'll know to leave the computer on and transfer the data, and we would be unlikely to encounter this scenario. It can still happen, but it's much less likely. So that's really a tough spot to be in, because what I really wanted to say, I couldn't say. But anyway, that's the life of being a computer technician. It's similar to like being a fireman in a way. I mean, people's lives aren't necessarily at stake, but it's just this idea that don't light candles and leave your house, and people do it and their house burns down, and it's an emergency for the firemen. Stop everything you're doing and come take care of me right now because my house is burning down because I didn't listen. Things that are completely avoidable. I understand people make mistakes. It's totally understandable. It's the billing process that I have for my customers, that I have on managed service, they get charged a flat rate. I say, this is how much it's going to cost you, no matter how much work you need to have done every month. It's going to cost you this much money every single month. So the only way I profit from that is if the amount of work they need done every month is less than the amount I'm charging for the labor. So if they have problems that they're creating that were completely avoidable, it's taking money out of my pocket. And if they continue to do that, then I have to raise their retainer. Now this customer, I haven't raised their retainer since 2008. They're paying me the same monthly rate for 10 years. And I don't want to go in there and have to up my rate. But if they won't listen and they're going to create more work for me, then I can't sustain a business on that flat rate. You either have to go back to hourly. The problem with hourly is a technician can milk a customer if the tech's like, you know what, I need a couple extra $100 this month, so this job's going to take a little longer than it otherwise would. Customers don't know. So how can you give the customer confidence that you're not going to milk a job? Well, one way to do that is to charge a flat rate. But then how do you prevent the customer from taking advantage of the flat rate and treating it like an all-you-can-eat buffet for service technical issues? So it's like a seesaw or a teeter-totter. It flips back and forth. And what I try to do is talk directly to the boss, to the one who's writing the checks. And I explain the situation just as I've explained it to you. And I go, look, if your clients, if your employees, won't follow the advice I'm giving you, then I have to change the rate that I'm charging you. And that's usually enough for the boss to put his or her foot down and say, this is the way it's going to be, or you're all going to lose your jobs. I don't want to see anybody lose their job over it, but I don't want to lose my job over it either. So if you're in the business of computer repair and you're dealing with businesses, this is the kind of situation that can possibly happen based on the way that I bill. Mike Smith, who I do tech vets with, he bills hourly. He just reduces it if they prepay for a certain number of hours. He calls that a retainer, which it is. It's a different kind of retainer than what I do. So Mike, it doesn't bother Mike if they want to, take more time to do a job, or they keep putting something off, or they add something they want him to do that's not part of the. For example, Mike recently helped a customer move all their computer equipment from one location to another. I'm not a mover. I don't do that. It's not part of the deal. In fact, most places that offer managed services will have you sign a multi-page contract, and most of that contract states what they won't do. So moves, changes, additions, deletions. That means when employees are brought on or employees are removed, there's maintenance that has to be done with resetting of the computers, removal of account access, email access. All of that takes time and labor, and it's all not within the technician's control. It's on a whim of the owner or of the employee. If the employee wants to quit, or the employer wants to hire 10 new people, you obviously can't keep charging them the same rate if they went from 10 employees to 20 employees. And so the rate then has to be reevaluated. When you charge hourly, who cares, right? Because if they just need more work, you just keep charging them for more work. The way my retainer is set up is I'm on the same page with the business owner, and that we're both wanting to pay. The business owners want to spend as little as possible, and I want to spend as little time as possible. And if they follow the advice I give them, then that is the end result for both of us, and everybody's happy. But the minute somebody doesn't play along and it starts eating into my income and my profitability, you can understand the situation that puts me in. So that's what's happened here with this machine. Now, as you recall, we pulled the motherboard out. Something happened when it powered on and it just fried out. And today we're going to replace the parts. I've got the Gigabyte B250M DS3H along with a Core i5-7500, 16 gigs of DDR4 Corsair Vengeance LPX RAM, and a 850 EVO M.2 Samsung, which is 250 gigs. I really didn't want to get a 250 gig drive. The smaller the drive, the better, because that limits how much data the employee can save to their hard drive instead of saving it on the server. If they didn't have any room on the hard drive for it, they'd go, well, where can I save this? You'd have to save it on the server. And rather than implementing rules to force them to put it onto the server, they do have some space on the hard drive, for adding other software and making other, having some personal files on there if they want to. I've seen them putting music and pictures from their phones and such, and that's okay. But like I said, I much prefer a 120 gig SSD in a workstation used in an office to discourage what ultimately turns out to be a support call when the customer fills the drive up, or avoids a support call because the customer realizes there's not enough space. The computer won't let them copy files. It'll say you need to free up more space, and they'll have to use an alternative storage area, ideally the network attached storage or server, which does get backed up regularly. So let's take a look at who's in the chat. We've got about 573 people watching right now. Hi to everybody watching. I see a couple of donations have come in while I've been yabbering on, like I always do, like a madman. Bob Barnes, once again, has contributed. He's contributed 10 pounds today. Thank you, Bob. Thanks for your continued support. And I see Kent Svensk has contributed what looks like 100 Swedish krona, which thank you for the contribution and your continued support as well. A quick shout out just to some random people I see in the chat. Mr. Mudcat Slim, Vincent Allega, Destroy Deep State, Nicholas Irwin, Joey, Tech Baron, YouTube Fan 2017, Stephen Barber, Tech Baron, Fubar Mike, Cornbread Man. Of course, a shout out to the moderators, keeping everything civil, Catherine Anna Hauserman, Douglas Biggers. Hello to Ben DeCure, I already said Vincent's name, DTB, Ryan James, Dakota Barron, Patrick Manny, Terry Snyder, Hyper Joe, Nino Shriver, Matt Shendon, Michigan Farmer 421, ID Music and Gaming, Diego Fernando, Monkey M, Jeremy Camp, Big Killer. Anyway, thanks you guys. Thanks for joining me. And this is going to be a very simple, pretty straightforward build. Now, this is going to be very similar to what you've seen me do in the past. I did another recent upgrade using very similar parts. And also doing the data transfer, which I'm also going to do here. This computer has an old OCZ, what is this, a Vertex, I can't really read it in there. I think there's an OCZ Vertex 4 in there. We're going to pull that and go with the 850 EVO M.2. This is a SATA M.2 drive. It's not NVMe. The motherboard, as inexpensive as this motherboard is, it will accept either one. The reason I did not go to NVMe are these clients are mostly loading things from the server, so it's really not going to benefit them much except at boot up, and as I mentioned, they should be leaving the computers on. Also, special drivers are needed to get the Windows 7 transferred over onto NVMe, which makes my job more difficult. If we were running Windows 10, I probably would have gone NVMe. But because we're running Windows 7, and we will continue to run Windows 7 probably until the last minute, probably until, I'm going to guess, knowing this customer, we probably won't go to Windows 10 until late 2019. So we've got another almost 2 years of Windows 7 ahead of us. And of course, by then it may be time to upgrade other computers in the office, and when that comes nearer, you'll probably see me start doing NVMe for those. So what'll end up happening is some of the offices will still have SSDs, some will have M.2 SATA, and some will have M.2 NVMe, and then eventually they'll all have M.2 NVMe unless something else between now and then comes out, because that's how it is, right? And somebody's trying to talk to me. Okay, stuff that can wait. Now, this computer that I'm streaming on has that update that was going to slow everything down by 30%, right? Potentially could slow up to 30% on some machines doing certain tasks. Well, it's not affecting the streaming computer by any percent. There's no effect on it whatsoever. Performance tests before and after are exactly identical. And as you can see, everything works. So once again, the news media, there was kind of a funny thing that was mentioned to me that, when Apple released their recent update that slowed down Apple computers, this is like an Apple conspiracy, man. Apple was trying to take the pressure off of them, so now Apple's intentionally slowing down computers. And to get the pressure off of them, the Apple Illuminati have said that now Intel is slowing their computers down by 30%, which makes Apple not look so bad. I love the internet. I love the conspiracy theorists. I've got an aluminum foil roll that I can make a hat out of, and might need to put that on really soon, but I thought that was hilarious. So whoever contributed that comment, thank you for that, because I hadn't had a good laugh in a while, but I'm sure it was meant in a joking way. Jacob Nielsen's contributed 20, which looks like, I think it's Danish krona. So thank you, Jacob, for your contribution and support. Remember, you don't just have to support the channel if you want to. You don't have to just support it financially. You can also support it by sharing links to the videos on your favorite social media sites, whether it's Reddit discussions, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Pinterest, I don't care. It's just a matter of bringing in more awareness that the channel exists for people that would be interested in it but just don't know of its existence. And that's a great way of supporting the channel as well. And for everybody who's supporting the channel, thank you. I really appreciate your continued support, however you give your support. All right, now, let's get to work. First thing I'm going to do is prep the motherboard, so I guess I will move the camera so you can see what I'm doing. Because we're going to prep this motherboard. Actually, wait. Before I move the camera, let's put the I/O shield in. So let's take that out. Let's grab that I/O shield. Come on. There we go. And let's just get that right in there. Okay, I/O shield is in. Now I'm going to go ahead and pull this OCZ drive out because we don't need it. And when I do the data transfer, I certainly don't need it in there. I think this screwdriver is going to work for me. I will have links to all these parts in the video description after the video is aired. I just am in such a hurry and I'm so busy I just didn't have time to do it. Yeah, so that's our old OCZ Vertex 4. That's been installed since 2013 and it's still running perfect. I just would like to change it because I can. Basically, I think the M.2 drive will run a bit faster. It'll of course be under warranty. I have yet to see an SSD die in any customer system, and there's proof right there. That one's going on 5 years old and has yet to exhibit a single negative symptom whatsoever. So SSDs are far superior in reliability, performance, power consumption, in every way to a hard drive. I can't find any downside to them, to be honest. So the rest of this stuff, I'll tell you what we'll do. Let's get this covered up. Let's get the motherboard out of its bag. We can chuck that. Good thing they taped it closed. They wouldn't want that motherboard coming loose in its box because how big the box is. God forbid it might move a ½ inch. All right, so there's our motherboard. We're gonna set that on top of the box. We're gonna turn that that way. I need to cut the tape on all these boxes. They are absolutely brand new. Everything on my channel is live and real. Nothing is sponsored. Nothing is dramatized or exaggerated for effect. So it does kind of make my channel a little more boring, but it's real. And let's face it, most of the time reality is pretty boring. All right, let me get you a close-up of what's going on here so you guys can see. I've shown you this a million times, but I feel like showing it 1,000,001. Let's see if I can get this camera moved without knocking everything over and disconnecting myself. Can I do it? Is it possible? Let's find out. Let's see, let's go more this way. And yeah, I think like that ought to be good. All right, everybody can see okay, I'm assuming. And then I will just straighten this out. I'm gonna pull it back towards me a little more so I don't have to reach so far forward to do this work. So one of the very first things I like to do, let me just move the keyboard and mouse out of my way here. One of the first things I like to do is just put the M.2 drive in. That's going to go right here. So I'm just going to grab the M.2 drive here. We'll get this out of the box. Empty box. I don't like this packaging that Samsung is doing. I think they could. I really liked how the 960 Evo Pro, was it the Evo Pro, I think? You just open up the box and it just kind of comes out like that and you just lift it out. I'm going to set that down here for a minute. I need to get a smaller screwdriver and we're going to take out this one screw that's in the motherboard right here. There we go. You'll see that's a magnetized screwdriver. Do not work on a computer without a magnetized screwdriver. It's very important. Then we're going to take the M.2 out of the container. It's going to go into the socket until you can't see the little gold connectors on the end. So line it up, push it forward, and the little gold connectors, can't see them anymore. And you'll see that's got a little springiness to it. On most motherboards, it kind of reminds me of like a diving board on a swimming pool or something. The opposite, right? Anyway, all we do with that screw we took out is we put it back in there, and it's just going to secure that location of the M.2 into position so it doesn't fall out. So it doesn't have to be super tight. You just snug it up. And there, you've already installed your storage. No cabling is required, which is amazing. And welcome. Maybe someday that'll be part of the motherboard. I won't be surprised. This is just the rest of the packaging and the instructions. I'll put that there and I'll put that over there. Now we can put our CPU or our RAM in, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to open up all these retention levers on the RAM. And we're going to lift up this lever and bring this up to expose the CPU socket. Here I've got the Core i5 box, and we'll go ahead and take this out. And Intel has put it in upside down, so we actually have to flip it this way. Empty box. Underneath this cardboard is our fan that has thermal compound already applied from the manufacturer. So there's no arguing over how to apply the thermal compound. This is our CPU right here, which will just slide straight out. We'll set that down. And then on the other side, we've got our instructions with our Go Faster sticker. The box can go over there. Yeah, there's your Go Faster sticker right there. And if you're worried about that patch slowing your computer down, just put that sticker on and it'll speed it right back up for you. I think that's the only way to negotiate with, or to communicate with people who think like that. All right, so here's the container, the packaging that the CPU comes in. Make sure that you're you're on the same electrical level as everything else in your environment. You could do that by touching something metal on the case. It's best to do this not on carpeting. And then when I open it, notice the way I handle it. I always handle by the edges. Take that out, get rid of that. It's got to line up properly into the socket with the notches and the arrows, and just set it gently in. We'll close the lid, and then when I close this lever down, you'll see that plastic lid pop up automatically. Take that plastic lid and put it away in case we have any warranty issues in the future. Now we can grab the heatsink, undo the cabling here. You definitely don't want the cable to ever make contact with the fan now or in the future, so I definitely want to make sure that that's loose. And I want to orient this heatsink so that the cable coming out that powers it goes right towards the connector on the motherboard, which is right there. So that's going to have my logo upside down, but this is an office. These cases have no windows. Nobody's ever going to see it except me. Opposite corners until you hear it click into position. This is a good time to grab a nylon zip tie and tie up this additional slack cable so it will not ever be a potential fan intrusion. I know I have zip ties around here. I can't find them. So let me go back to my office and grab them because I'm always in a hurry. And every time when I go live, I always forget something. So bear with me, please. It'll just take me a minute. I've got my zip ties out here. These are just little 4-inch zip ties. They're the most common I use on computers. And I'm simply going to grab what I can of that cable. Start the tighten it, but don't tighten it all the way so I can pull through any additional slack. And when I'm happy with it, then I tighten it down. And then I get my wire cutters, which I don't have in here either. Now I have to go get my wire cutters. See, I could have made this all in one trip if I had known. Here they are. And we'll just cut this little pigtail off of here. And that's what that looks like right there, right? So already our cable management looks nice and clean. And then the last thing we've got to do is put the RAM in. I think, 8 gigs of RAM is certainly a minimum. And RAM is pretty expensive right now, and the customer did have 8 prior to this. So since we're doing an upgrade, wanted to bump them up to 16. Whether or not they'll actually use it, I don't know, but it's sort of future-proofing us. This is just a standard workstation in an office doing a lot of Microsoft Office type stuff. So the RAM may be a little bit of overkill for them. On these Gigabyte boards, we're going to use the gray sockets first. We're going to open this up just like so. Come on now. Now this RAM is pretty loose in its pack. I've seen some RAM that's really tight in the plastic packaging. Don't bend the RAM to get the RAM out. Always bend the plastic packaging. Hold the RAM by the edges, or in this case, there's a big heat spreader on top of the RAM. You can hold it anywhere along the heat spreader without worrying of electrostatic discharge. There's a little plastic, which is pretty common, covering up the name of the company. The RAM only goes in one way. Make sure it's oriented in the proper direction. Line it up in the track. Push down one corner, then the other corner. And there's 8 gigs of RAM installed. Finally, we're going to do the same thing with this last stick of RAM. Once again, I'm going to take that plastic off of there. It doesn't have to come off. It's just to protect it in shipping. So there's no reason to leave it on. Reminds me of the old folks back when I was growing up. The old people used to put plastic on their furniture. All right, one side, other side. And then I'll raise those other retention levers. And right there, that motherboard is done. That's our RAM, CPU, storage, all of it. And that can go over there. That's the whole computer. Video is built into the motherboard. Sound is, video is built into the chip, but there's video connectors on the board. Audio is built into the board. Ethernet is built into the board. So the only thing we need is a way to protect this from shorting out, which is what a computer case is for. And we need power. That's it. That's all there is to building a computer today. Very, very simple. Let me move the camera back so we can go back to a wide angle shot. So bear with me here for a moment as I figure this one out. I think that's about right. Oh no, it's really tilted, isn't it? This is not the best tripod for this. Come on. Come on, I know you can do it. Times like this, I wish I had a cameraman. All right. I think I got that ready. And these tools I can put away. I'm done with these. Done with my nylon zip ties for right now. Those can go back there. Spare parts, we'll just put those up there. All right. I'm working up a sweat. I'm working too quick. Whew. All right. Everybody get all that? Any questions about this whole motherboard prep process? If you have any questions, this would be the time to ask, because the next step is to install the motherboard into the case. It's hard for me to talk and read the chat at the same time. Get a pan and tilt head for your tripod. It is a pan and tilt head, but it's locked into position, so you have to squeeze a trigger to release it. So it's not like other tripods that are designed for film cameras. This is a tripod mostly designed for like a still DSLR or something like that. So, but I really like the tripod. The fluid head top part, and there's a name for it, it's just eluding me right now, will screw into this tripod, but the one I want, just that one piece, is $150. So for right now, I'll just struggle with what I've got. And looks like Gville612 has contributed $50. Thank you so much. He says, keep up the great work, Kerry. Well, thank you, Gville612. Thank you for your support and contribution to the channel. Hey, maybe I'll be able to get one of those new tripod. That's going to bug me. I can't think of what the word is. It's the top part of the tripod. I'm sure somebody in the chat's going to tell me what it's called. Is there a book on computers you would recommend? Yeah, Upgrading and Repairing PCs by Scott Mueller. He's been updating and writing these books for over 20 years now. And the books are about 4 or 5 inches thick and contain a DVD that contained content from previous books that had to be removed, that's now considered obsolete. And said it's a tripod head. Okay, well, I guess that's what it is, tripod head. Thank you, Malcolm, for that. Yeah, there's a really nice tripod head on Amazon. It's $150. Problem is I have 3 tripods. I don't necessarily have to buy a new tripod head for all 3, but certainly need at least one for the main tripod for these live feeds. It would make aligning it a lot easier. It does look like it's still on a bit of an angle. Let me see if I can fix that real quick. Let me switch over. It's just slightly tilted. See, I'm just looking at the bottom of the table. And it looks like that's pretty close. Otherwise, I could just stand like this. Maybe that would help. Is it called a camera quick shoe? No, the quick shoe, that's the part that slides in and out of the tripod head, so that you can quickly remove the camera or change the camera out without adjusting or having to screw up the location and leveling of the tripod. What was the original platform that you're upgrading this PC? I don't know. I can't remember. Z87 maybe? I think it was Z87. Anything you see in the background or from other videos, if you're curious, you can look through my video library and find those videos. Okay, since nobody's got any questions about the motherboard prep, now it's time for me to install the motherboard into the case. All of the standoffs should be in the same locations as the board we removed. So what I'm going to do is lay the case flat, and I have to apologize up ahead of time that you guys are not going to be able to see the inside of the mounting process because I have no way to get a camera up above me. Another project for another day, more money. So what I'll do is I'll just get it started. I left the mounting screws in the standoff, so I need to take those out real quick. I don't want to use that driver, I want to use this one. All right, so these are all of the mounting screws. I just kept them in the standoff so I wouldn't lose them. It does look like the board that was in here was longer than this board, so I'm probably gonna have to move some standoffs around. So I'm gonna just put the motherboard in and take a look at where the mounting holes are. Yeah, it looks like one can come out and one has to be moved. So that's real easy. I'm just going to use my 5mm socket, and we're going to take out one of these standoffs because the board is not long enough to need it, and I don't want to just leave it in there. And there's another standoff that's too far down. It needs to be moved to the hole that's about an inch away above it towards the top of the case. And that leaves me with 2, 4, 6 standoffs. That sounds about right. And then I just want to tighten that one back down. And now I can take the board, place it into the case. Make sure that all of the ports line up with the holes in the I/O shield. So the board's going to go in like this and then lay flat. Make sure that everything's lined up here, and it's not. There, now my audio just came through. And then I can start putting these screws back in. I'm just going to lock all these down here real quick, and then I'll put it back up on its feet so you can see. All I'm really doing here is making sure of two things. One, that there is a standoff where there is a hole in the motherboard, and that there are no standoffs where there is no hole in the motherboard that could then become invisible back behind the motherboard and then cause a short circuit to the motherboard. The other thing I'm doing is making sure that before I start the screws, that all of the input-output ports, the I/O ports, are lined up correctly so that I don't have to turn around and undo this again once I go to do my first power on self-test and realize I can't get the monitor plugged in, or I can't get the USB keyboard or mouse plugged in because I didn't line it up with the I/O shield right, and then I have to undo the work I did, which isn't very time consuming, but it's just a little frustrating and discouraging not doing it right the first time in my world. There we go. So motherboard is now mounted, and we can pick this up and show you what that looks like. Here we go. Can you retrieve data from an unbootable system? Yeah, you would take the hard drive out of the machine, and you would put it into a USB dock, and then you should be able to access it. What did this go to? Oh, this was to the solid state drive. I'll put that in there. These I'll save, that'll save. All this stuff, that can go. This customer won't need any of the boxes or instructions. They're in office, and they call me when they have problems. And if I ask them to hold on to that, they'll put it away, and no one will ever know where it went. And I'd have to make a note of who put it away and what date and where they put it, so I might as well just hold on to it myself. That's actually pretty common in an office where the person who does the job is the person who's there that day. And then that information doesn't get relayed to anybody else. And so after a few months or after a year or more, nobody can remember who did it or where they put it. So these customers just don't get it. They don't get the spare parts. I hold on to them. And then if they need spare parts, I don't charge them for them. So I'll keep these SATA cables. The driver disc can go in the trash. We won't need it. These instructions can go in the trash. The Go Faster sticker can go in the trash. All that can go. But if this was a regular, ordinary residential customer, they would get all of that so that they wouldn't be tied to me, that they could fix it themselves or they could hire somebody else. And that's the reasoning behind that. I just had my internet upgraded, so hopefully the quality of the image is as good as or better than it's been in the past. Let me get power hooked up to the board. That's pretty straightforward. We got two large cables. The one single large cable here is the main motherboard power. Remember this case, this is an all aluminum $100 case. And it didn't really give us any opportunity for cable management, so this is what you have to do. Once again, the only person who's opening these up and looking at them or working on them is me. So I make it as easy to work on as possible, given what I have to work with. And, you know, I could have recommended a different case for this customer, but part of the whole sale of buying these cases many years ago was that they could be upgraded numerous times. So I'm going to wait until we've upgraded this a few times, or until their needs change, where they need to have, for example, USB 3 up front. They don't have anything USB 3 currently, so they don't, you know, to upgrade them to the Corsair 200R is almost visually imperceptible to most customers. They're almost, you know, the Corsair's plastic in a lot of places where this one's a brushed aluminum. The Corsair has space for 2.5-inch solid-state drives, but we took care of that with this adapter. So I want to continue to make sure the customer really feels like it was a good investment on their part to buy these cases so that they don't have to buy cases again. That's the whole point. And so they don't. So customers like to save money. That fan is a little bit tight. I need to, come on. Come on, you. Oh man, I really put those on there. I need to loosen that fan cable up. It reaches, but it's just too tight for my liking. Makes me a little nervous. So I am going to just cut the nylon zip tie here. Let's see if it's going to let me pull through a little more. That's a little better. Now, how are we doing? Just want to make sure the cable in no way will be able to interfere with this fan. That's what's got me in my, see how this cable comes down over the fan? That has me most concerned. So I want to get another wire tie and just kind of take this one, and this one goes to the optical drive. This one's going to go way up here like that. We're going to keep that. Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about this. I kind of feel like this should be wire tied up a bit higher. More like that. We've got the front port umbilicals to hook up, and front port, let's see, we've got front port audio. That's going to go right there. You guys can see, I can't tell what you guys can see. So that's going to go right there. This looks like the card reader, which I don't even think they use, but we'll keep it hooked up. We'll put that there. And then we've got all the front port switches and LEDs. The power LED is on a 3-pin, which is weird. but that's kind of shows you the age of the case. Reset should go there. Hard drive LED should go there. And finally, power switch should go right there. The cables are a bit tighter. I really don't want to have to redo these nylon zip ties. This one I'll have to just zip tie that one up. And it's fairly clean cable management overall, but that's ready to be powered on. We're done. We are absolutely all done. That's all there was. Now we get to turn it on. Let me get a monitor over here. Put that over here. And we'll plug this in over here. Let's see. Let's move that there. We'll plug this in here. I gotta plug power to the monitor. Let's get that going. Then I need a power cable, which means I have to go back again to find a power cable. Power supply is in the off position. Got power there. Plug it in over here. All right, are we ready? This is where we do our smoke test. Let me grab a keyboard and mouse dongle. And I'm gonna plug that in right back here. It's all live, there's no editing. Did I do it right? Is it gonna boot? Let's find out. Come around, hit the power button. Power light's on. These two fans are spinning. This motherboard only has one fan header anyway. I don't hook up the two front fans, I've discussed that. Give it a minute. Ideally, it's going to power up, tell us no bootable device found. I still have to hook up the SATA cable to the optical drive. I better not forget to do that. I don't need it right now. So this is what I wanted to see, reboot and select proper boot device. Hallelujah. All right. So what I'm going to do next is find out if there's a new BIOS update for this board. Let me see what version I've got. There's going to be a BIOS update pretty much for everybody with an Intel chipset because of this, exploit. It's not just a software patch. There is a BIOS update that'll go along with it eventually. I don't know, depending on your manufacturer. So I doubt the BIOS update I'm going to get today is going to have that patch on it. But something to keep in mind for future. All right, we're running BIOS version, what is our BIOS version? I don't know. Let's go over to System. There it is. Whoops. We're in BIOS version F7 from July. What I'm going to do is go on to the internet real quick, grab a flash drive, and look up the B250M DS3H at Gigabyte's website. It should be a zip file, and I'm going to extract the BIOS file from that and put it on a fresh, clean, empty flash drive that's smaller than 8 gigs, formatted in FAT32 or FAT16, depending on what size flash drive you've got. And nothing else will be on the flash drive but the BIOS file. This way it ensures that it makes my job easier. If there's not a lot of files to choose from, if I only have one choice, it reduces the odds of making a mistake by moving too quickly. And I do move very quickly. Let's see, said it was a B250M-DS3H BIOS. Just go to Google, brings up the very first link, which brings us the product page for that motherboard. I click on support. And then I'm going to go to, I realize you guys can't see this because I'm in the back room here. I'm going to go to BIOS, and there's a new BIOS labeled F8. So it's only one version newer. It was released on November 1st. And it was updating Intel's management engine for security vulnerabilities. So that was another one way back that Intel had that they had to address. But for some reason, didn't get this kind of press coverage. I don't know how the press decides when to create widespread panic. Maybe it's just a slow news day And if the news is slow, then they just drum up other things. Give me just a minute here. Wow, okay. It's downloading. It's almost there. The download is 5.4 megabytes. And the zip file that we're downloading is going to contain 3 files. It's going to contain a flash file, a batch file, and then the BIOS file itself. All I want is the BIOS file itself. I don't want the flash program, nor do I want the autoexec bat. So I'm just going to extract the zip file into its own directory. And then I open that directory, locate the actual BIOS file, which ends with .f8 instead of like .exe or .bat. And I'm simply going to copy that and paste it onto my flash drive. The BIOS file itself is relatively small. It's about 8 megs. And then I'm going to disconnect the flash drive, which for some reason is not showing up. So, I'll just right-click on the flash drive and choose the eject option. There we go. And I can come back to where you guys are. And I've got the flash drive right here. I'm gonna plug that in the back. It only goes in one of 2 ways, so why does it take 3 tries? I don't know. And we're going to turn the system off. Should have done it with the system off, actually. It's USB, it doesn't matter. Turn it back on, and I'm going to hit the end key, END, which on gigabyte boards takes us to a BIOS utility called QFlash. That's the utility we're using. Everybody can see, am I in your way? Try and stand off to the side. I'm just going to hit enter. That's the file I want right over there. I need a mouse. That's the file that I just copied to the flash drive. It's the only file on the flash drive. It's the only file I can pick. I hit enter, and now it's updating. Eddie Sawyers has contributed $2 to the channel. Thank you, Eddie. Thanks for your continued support of the channel. Yeah, the USB Type-C is the one that'll plug in either way. So we're going to let that update. It's going to take just a minute. So we're just going to stand by and wait for that. Still flashing. The only important thing you need to know about flashing a BIOS is that you don't interrupt it. Don't play with your keyboard. Don't play with your mouse. Certainly don't turn off or reset the computer. Just if you're so ADD, get up and leave the room. Go watch some TV. It only takes 5 minutes, but you know what? Go watch a show for a half an hour. The computer's very, very patient. It will wait for you indefinitely for you to come back. But that's how critically important it is that you just leave it alone. As long as you leave it alone, it's probably going to work just fine. These days, modern computers won't even let you flash if you have the wrong BIOS. So that used to be the worst mistake people made, is they didn't recognize the differences between revisions of a board. They'll say, well, I got the right board, but they got the wrong revision. And that would create all kinds of what were otherwise avoidable problems. But that pretty much doesn't happen today. Now we have the latest BIOS, and I'm just going to wait for that to boot, and it did. Turn this off, remove my flash drive. I'll just set it there for now. Why is it coming back on? Turn that off. All right, so the next thing I want to do is grab my Acronis disk and a spare SATA cable. Where's my Acronis? There it is. And I need a SATA cable. I know I've got SATA cables right here. Here we go. And now we're going to image or clone the customer's SSD onto the M.2 drive that's built on that, that we just put onto the motherboard. Get that out of here. So it doesn't really matter. This is just a temporary setup. I just want to make sure we're not going to accidentally static shock anything, which would be almost impossible in this scenario. That extra cable I got hanging around here, glad I didn't tie it up yet because I still need it. So that hooks up our SSD. This is Acronis 2018, and when I have time, I'll show you guys how you make the bootable media you see me use. But for those of you who can follow my vocal instructions, you buy your Acronis product. This is Acronis 2018. You go to acronis.com and you create an account and you register your product with Acronis using the serial number that comes with the product. There's two benefits to doing this. One, Acronis will forever keep your serial number. So if you lose it, all you have to do is log back into Acronis and look under your account. 10 years from now, that product key is still there. And Acronis 2018 will still work. It may not work with a modern operating system, but it'll work just as it did in 2018 when you bought it. The second thing it enables you to do is to go to the download section. Much like other software like drivers, people don't want to use the drivers that come on the motherboard disk because newer ones are available on the web. Well, the product you get, the Acronis product you get on the CD that you buy, is more than likely obsolete. They always update it regularly throughout the year. I think there's been 4 updates since November. Almost every month there's been a new update to Acronis. So what I do is I download the latest version to ensure compatibility with the most amount of products and motherboards and drives and et cetera, et cetera. And there's a download not only for the installation file, but for the ISO image of the rescue disk. And that's all this is. It's just an ISO image downloaded directly from Acronis, offered to me based on my product key, forever available to me. Download the latest version. I use Rufus, which is a free utility that I've demonstrated in previous videos that converts an ISO image to a bootable USB drive. And I'm done. I just put a label on the USB drive so I know that it's different from the other ones. And I'm just going to put the USB drive in there. We're going to go right in any of these slots, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I use a small USB flash drive. That's only a 2 gig USB flash drive. It would be a shame to waste an 8 gig flash drive or larger because you won't be able to put anything else on it. So let's turn it back on. Let's get this some juice. Let's turn it back on. I'm going to hit F12 on the keyboard. That should bring up our boot options. And then that's where I'm going to select the flash drive because I don't want it to boot from the hard drive. So I'm just repeatedly hitting F12, F12, F12. There's our choices. I want the UEFI USB disk 8.07. Acronis Trimage 64-bit is option 1. And Acronis cost me about $30. It's right in that range, $30, $35. And you see the way I use it. You see how flexible it is and how it makes my life as a tech so much easier. So that's what we want to do. We're going to make a clone. So it's not a backup or a recovery, it's a tool. So under Tools and Utilities, we have the option to clone the disk. Clone mode is automatic and click Next. The source drive is disk number 1, which is 120 gig OCZ Vertex 4. The option for the source drive right here is the flash drive that has Acronis on it. That's obviously not what we want. So disk number 1, and then hit next. Now it takes a minute as it scans your system and looks for other compatible drives. This one came up quick. It says disk 2 is now an option to clone 2. This is the target, which is 232.9 gig Samsung SSD 850. Interface is serial ATA. You'll see down here the interface is USB. That's our Acronis flash drive again. So we're basically going from disk 1 to disk 2. Click next. It says right now disk 2 is empty, and afterwards disk 2's partitions are going to look like this. If you're okay with that, click proceed. And there we go. We start to roll. Now, while this is running, let me look through. I see some contributions are made. Anybody who contributes, you know you're going to get a shout out because you guys deserve a shout out. So let me just move my keyboard and mouse over to the streamer. And let's take a look at what I've missed. Okay. $20 contributed from Mr. Mudcat Slim. Guess that's how you say that. Bobby has contributed $5. Nigel Baptiste has contributed $10 and says, keep up the good work. Thank you to Nigel, Bobby, and what was that other one? Mr. Mudcat Slim. Thank you guys for supporting the channel. I do really appreciate that. Somebody wants to know the make and model of my keyboard and mouse. That has been listed in other videos. It's going to be on Amazon. If you just do a Google search for Jellycomb, it should bring up the keyboard and mouse. It's about a $30, $35 keyboard mouse combo. Pretty happy with it. The mouse could be better. It's just a little slim for my liking. Carrie, do you have rewind turned off? Yes and no. YouTube has an option to lower the latency so that normally when you do a YouTube live stream, there can be a 10 to 30 second delay between what I say and when you hear it. When you do that, it allows the option to rewind. I'm on ultra low latency, which means the amount of time between when I say something and when you hear it is reduced as much as technically possible. That disables the option for using rewind. However, this live stream will be made available as a normal video that you can go forward and backward in after it's completed and been processed at YouTube. So if you missed the beginning, just watch a couple hours later. You'll see that the video will be posted. I see Brytech09 has jumped into the chat. Hey, Brytech. We're just waiting for Acronis to finish its clone. Gabriel Martinau has contributed $2 and says, hi, Carrie, love your vids. Well, thank you for your contribution, Gabriel. I want to make sure I got everybody. I hope I didn't miss anybody. Yeah, we're good. We're caught up. If you've asked a question earlier and it went by and nobody in the chat answered it, if you didn't get an answer, go ahead and re-ask right now while I'm waiting for Acronis to finish. I will do my best to provide you an answer. Acronis is $49 on their site. Yes, if you buy it from Acronis, you will pay the most amount of money for it. If you buy Acronis from Amazon, you'll pay about half the price. That's the way it's always been. In fact, that's the way it is for a lot of stuff. If you buy directly from the manufacturer charges the suggested retail price. They wouldn't devalue their own product. But if you go through a seller, the seller will decide how much profit they want to make because the seller's buying it at a discount. And they can decide if they want to sell it at the manufacturer's suggested retail price or not. Unlike companies like Apple, you know, where you're forced. All right, let's take a look. It looks like Acronis is finished or it's coming up with some kind of a screen. Disk was successfully cloned. We're done. So all I have to do now is cut power, remove the solid state drive. We're done with it. I don't need the SSD, the SATA data cable anymore. That's it. It should just boot now. I need my keyboard and mouse back, so let me grab it. The other advantage of making sure that these customers only have that 120 gig SSD is you saw how fast that clone went. If they only have 120 gigs maximum, then that's the most they could ever lose, right? It also makes my job faster because it's the most I'll ever have to transfer as far as data transfer goes. So right now, I haven't adjusted anything in the BIOS. It was just flashed. We've cloned, and now I'm just booting. I haven't touched anything. Let's just see what happens. Ben DeCure contributed $50. He says, thanks for the live stream, Kerry, and hope you're doing well. Well, thanks for your generous contribution, Ben. I really appreciate it. And I know I've seen your name many times in the chat before, and it's always good to see regular faces. And of course, the contributions are fantastic. Maybe at the end of this, I'll be able to get one of those new heads for my tripod. All right, so right now everything's loading, and I want to just kind of give my customer a little bit of privacy here. Let's hide all these desktop icons. There we go. So as you can see, I'm in a very low resolution mode because the video drivers haven't loaded. So I'm going to use the motherboard driver disk to install the drivers for the chipset, for the graphics card, et cetera, et cetera. And interestingly enough, on these boards, they're not including an Intel driver for the graphics because they're saying it's not Windows 7 compatible. Well, anyway, Intel makes it. We can use Snappy Driver Installer to take care of that. It's not the big deal that the marketing companies would have you believe it is. And then once that's done, you know, it's done. There we have the unsupported hardware message. We'll use the WUFUC utility that will remove that, and of course it will run as normal. But one of the reasons I did not go to NVMe on this build was that would be just one more thing I'd have to do in order to maintain compatibility with Windows 7. And I'm trying to make my job as easy as possible, both for the benefit of the customer and for me. I'm just looking at chat right now to see what people are saying. System's running nice and quiet. That's always a good thing. So for me to get I guess the first thing I need to do is shut down and get the optical drive hooked up so I can start the driver installation. If I just hit the power button, it'll cycle through a normal power off, as you'll see here in just a minute. It actually looks like it's been loading drivers, and it wants to go to the update site and download updates right now, but I don't have an Ethernet cable hooked up to it yet on purpose. So what I'm going to do, using the SATA cable that was in there, once the machine does eventually shut off, I'm just going to hook up the optical drive, and I'll wire tie this a little bit later. That's just going to go in there, and then we'll plug this in any of these 4 ports. It doesn't really matter. I think that's the one I want right there. Now I'll turn it back on, and I'm going to grab that motherboard driver disk, which I have right here, and we're going to put that in. Oh, I'm too anxious. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. Let's go, move it. Bob Barnes has contributed another 10 pounds. Says, great work, Kerry, and well done. Well, thank you, Bob. Again, thanks for your contribution. Okay, now we should be able to do the auto run utility off the, well, it's loading the driver now for the optical drive, because remember, we've got a different hard drive controller. So even though it was the same optical drive that it had the driver for on the operating system we cloned, it still has to recognize it as though it were new again because the hard drive controller is new. And therefore, anything connected to a new hard drive controller is new. It's really that simple. We're going to bring up the Gigabyte utility disk here. We're going to close this fake error message. And I know they don't give us much to install here. Again, because of the supposed compatibility issues that this chip has with Windows 7, which is all bogus. It's all just marketing. It's not technical. There's no technical reason this wouldn't work. When we talk about that Intel exploit, you guys also have to upgrade your browsers. There's going to be an update to Edge, an update to Firefox, an update to Chrome 64. They will all be updated because of this Intel exploit. So it's not enough to update your Windows and to update your BIOS, but you'll also have to update your browser. Okay, so we have everything but the video driver. And we'll let that roll. And I think I can grab my keyboard and mouse. And we're going to plug it back into the streamer. And let's see what I have missed. Where's my mouse? Over here. Okay. Yeah, someone says, LOL, so much for saving files to a server. Yeah, you can imagine how I feel when I see that. However, when I talked to the customer about it, they said none of those files were important. But if they're not important, why are they there at all? I don't want to... It's tough sometimes where you've got to balance out how you feel with being diplomatic and considerate to a customer. Or you're not going to have a customer very much longer. For those who want to donate and the donate option is not available in the chat, you can always use the donate button at tech-vets.com, and that just goes right through PayPal. Just put little notes in there what your donation is for, any comments you want to make. I won't see it during the live stream. I'll get it after the stream. But I'll send you an email response to confirm that I got it and to say thank you for it. Do you have to uninstall old drivers? A lot of these drivers are exactly the same. We still have a Realtek network interface card. We still have a Realtek sound card. We still have, we went from a gigabyte board to a gigabyte board. We still have an Intel hard drive controller, just a different version thereof. And so when we install the new drivers, they should overwrite the old drivers because it's the same manufacturers of hardware, just different versions of the hardware. It certainly would not hurt you to go into your add remove programs and uninstall your old drivers first. I have seen occasions where you end up with 2 video drivers in your add remove programs, and you don't know which one is the old one and which one is the new one. Sometimes you can tell by the install date, but sometimes you can't. Then you're left with no other choice if you want to clear that out than to remove both of them and then once again reinstall that specific driver. So there's certainly no harm in removing the old drivers, but it's not always necessary. Oh, Brian says, I'm looking sharp today. Well, thank you, Brian. Brian's in a good mood today. I misspelled motherboard in the stream. Oh, this is interesting. It didn't save my... I'm looking at a completely different screen. This still is showing me the Intel CPU exploit, the information from my last live stream. I wonder why. I set it to a different thumbnail and I set it to a different title. And YouTube said you saved it, so I don't know. I don't know why. This will all be fixed after the live stream. I apologize for that, guys. This is what happens when I move so quickly typos get made and things get rushed. So you guys are seeing the right title. I'm not seeing it. So because I'm not seeing, well, you know what? Let me refresh my page. Maybe that's what I need to do. I'm always worried I'm going to interrupt my stream, but I'm not refreshing OBS. I'm just refreshing the live stream. Ah, there it is. Okay. Oh, I say I've got 2 R's in motherboard. All right, you guys may not see that unless you refresh your page if it's bothering you. Thanks for bringing it to my attention. If you see anything else, please let me know. Is M2 really an improvement on SSD? The M2 is just a different way of installing SSD. There's 2 different versions of M2. There's SATA, which is exactly the same data transfer as a normal SSD, except you don't have to run any cables to it. And then there's NVMe, and NVMe is about 5 times faster. And when you consider that an SSD is already about 5 times faster than a hard drive, when you say that NVMe can be up to 5 times faster than if NVMe is up to 5 times faster than an SSD, and an SSD is 5 times faster than a hard drive, I'd say that's a significant performance boost. But whether or not you actually experience it depends on how you use the machine. All right, let's see what we got going on now. The updates are still going. I have to, if I want to close these boxes to see what's going on, I've got to hook the mouse and keyboard back up here to close those, to look behind them. Close. Yeah, see, it's still going on back here. So we'll just let that continue to run. And I'll just put this over here. It'll reboot a couple of times during the OS install. During the driver install. I can ignore that. That's just because I don't have any internet plugged into it right now. Can you clone a store-bought PC with Acronis? Acronis doesn't know what it's cloning. Acronis is a piece of software, and it takes all the ones and zeros located on the left, and it copies all the ones and zeros over to the right. If those ones and zeros are viruses or temp files or retail OS installs, it doesn't know. So the answer to your question is yes, Acronis will copy any hard drive. As long as you've got the latest version of Acronis, it'll copy any hard drive to any hard drive. It'll copy Linux, I believe it'll copy Mac drives, Windows drives. It doesn't matter where those drives came from, if they're in another language, if this operating system was in Chinese, or if it was in Korean, or if it was in Spanish. I could still use the English version of it. You guys come up with some bizarre questions sometimes. One of the things I do on my channel, and maybe it's because you're new here, if there are situations where you can't use Acronis, I would say that. I would let you know ahead of time. I won't just tell you a little piece of information and say, well, you're on your own to figure the rest out. I believe in full disclosure here. So if there were exceptions, I would certainly make you aware of those exceptions. Using the latest version of Acronis, there are no exceptions. So I hope that clears that up and any concerns or follow-up questions you may have, because you should be able to now know the answer to your own questions at this point. And let me just move my keyboard and mouse back over here so I can just check the status of our install. I like to see our progress, how it's coming along. Close that. Cancel that. There we go. So we're installing the Realtek LAN drivers right now. Those of you who want to know what this machine was, you just need to go to my video library. You'll see that there was a computer repair. I think this one is part 2 of the repair, if I'm not mistaken. It's hard to remember now. I've done so many of these. You can go back, you can watch that video, and then you can come back to this one if you want. We'll still be here. Or if you end up missing this one, it'll be available, as I mentioned, after the broadcast. After YouTube processes it, it'll be available to watch like any other video. What's that say? Would you like to install? Yes, I would. That's for USB 3. I'll just click the box to always trust software from Intel. We are almost done. There we go. So we got all the drivers installed. We'll click OK. And then we're going to reboot to make all the drivers active. Except we still don't have a video driver, and I'm going to show you here in a minute how I take care of that. So give me just a moment. I think what I'm going to do is, while we're rebooting, I'm going to grab a separate mouse. I know I've got one around here somewhere. So I can look at the chat, since I'm going to have to be going back and forth quite a bit. I hate when I hook up 2 different mice, though, because it often confuses me over which one to use. Let's see, Orlando Breve has contributed $10 to the channel, says keep up the good work and Happy New Year. Well, thank you, Orlando, and Happy New Year to you as well. Thank you for the contribution. All right, so it looks like we have finally got this installed. So once again, I'm going to hit cancel here and close there. So there's Windows with all the drivers but the graphics driver. That's the only thing we don't have installed. So I need to grab a network cable, and we're going to plug it into the internet, and that's where I'm going to finish the driver install and fix that not compatible bogus error message that Microsoft thinks it's okay to lie to customers if it's in the shareholders' best interest. I don't know how that's ethical or moral, but that's what it is. I'm not happy about it. I think it's dishonest. It's no different than just telling a lie. It's really no different. And the motivation for that lie is money. Okay, we've got it plugged in. And let's see, we'll close this. It's already loaded new drivers. Well, it's been sitting here. I'm going to just click Home Network on here, let that apply. Just take a minute. We're not sharing anything. Next. finish, restart. This is a good time for you to now bring out your stopwatches and you can see in real time how quickly this computer gets to the desktop. Shane Davies has contributed £1 to the channel. Thank you, Shane. Thank you for your contribution. Remember, these computers go to an office where I am their managed service provider. I'm their IT department. So with regards to Windows updates, configurations, things like that, that all is constantly checked by me on a regular basis to ensure that the computers are updated and secured. And we've already booted. Still loading more driver software. This is pretty typical. It's finding a USB mass storage device, which is the Acronis flash drive I never took out. So I'm going to wait for that to finish. Should just take a moment. And if it wants a reboot again, we'll certainly do it, but I don't think it will. There's our fake error message. We'll close that, and we'll eject the mass storage, which is this USB flash drive back here. Not to confuse it with the BIOS flash drive. You'll see they're the same make and model. They're both 2 gig flash drives that are really great for BIOS flashing and Acronis, as I've given you in this example. Archum1302 has contributed £2. Thank you, Archum. Thank you for your contribution to the channel. Yeah, so my graphics here, there needs to be an updated driver. So there's a couple of things we need to do. Let me stand over here. I want to download WUFUC to fix that error message that we see. Whoops, I don't know what all this stuff is. Let's close all that. So we just type WUFUC. It goes to GitHub. That's what I want. Scroll down. We're looking for the download for the 64-bit Windows. Latest stable build right here under Downloads. Scroll down. Which one do you want? You want 64-bit, 32-bit, blah, 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 source code. It's all open source. We want the very first one. WUFUC setup, 64-bit. It's going to download that. It's only 2.5 megs. It's pretty quick. And then we're going to execute and install it. Accept the terms. We can close out the browser. Next, next. And just let this install. It just takes a minute. It is open source, so you don't have to worry about, am I putting a virus on my machine? If you want to look at the source code, you can look at the source code. It's no secret to what it is. This will enable Windows 7 to continue to get updates with the 6th, 7th, and 8th gen Intel processors that Microsoft falsely says are incompatible. Again, that is a blatant lie done for marketing purposes in order to get you to spend money to Windows 10. Now we can go and use Windows Update to check for updates. We'll just see what's going on here in just a minute. We should see at least one update for the Intel exploit that was patched last night. It'll just take a minute. Does YouTube take a cut on tips? Yes, YouTube takes a big cut on tips. That's why if you can contribute through PayPal, I keep more of it. PayPal only takes like 2%. But regardless of that, it's not really about YouTube's cut or anything. It's just about the people's generosity and support. That means the world to me. So one important update is available at 231.4 megs. That's crazy. That's a big update. So we're going to go ahead and let that update. Chris Wall says, Kerry, on your recommendation, I purchased Acronis 2018. Thanks for all your efforts with helping and entertaining us all. It was £36.99 lifetime. Yeah, it's a lifetime license, but when the new version comes out in 2019, you may want to buy it because For example, Acronis 2015 or 2016, there was no NVMe drive, so it doesn't recognize them. So if you had to clone to or from an NVMe, the older versions of Acronis prior to the invention of NVMe don't recognize it. They can't see it. So I always update every year to have the latest version, because the latest version always works with older hardware. But the older versions only work with the hardware that was out at that time that version of Acronis was released and prior. I forgot to shout out Fanco. Did I miss someone? Let's see what we've got here. Oh yes, Franco Faggi has contributed $20 to the YouTube channel. He says, thank you for your knowledge. Well, thank you, Franco. I appreciate your generosity and your contribution to the channel. Carrie, do you have a plan for your customers for January 2020 when Windows 7 support ends? Yes, of course. Yeah. We will have their machines upgraded in Windows 10, whatever the latest OS is, installed. Probably we'll do one machine in June, that summer of 2019, and we'll make sure that we get everything working on that one machine. Once we have the green light, we'll do the rest of the machines the same way. And they'll be done before January. And that'll be the process for all my customers. That gives me 6 months. That's plenty of time. And around January of 2019, I will be telling my customers about the upcoming expenditure that they can expect by the end of the year or throughout the year for upgrading the machines. So they won't be blindsided by it. They'll know it's coming. And I can give them a ballpark of what it's going to cost and how much time it's going to take based on how many machines they have and what kind of software they have. People ask if I build Linux machines. This comes up quite a bit, stuff about Linux and Hackintosh. My channel's really designed for the average computer user who knows nothing about computers to make all of this information approachable and attainable to the average person. My channel is not intended for geeks and nerds and people who already know. Certainly don't kick them out, but the people that use Linux generally do it themselves. I can't run a business fixing Linux. There's no money in it. I can't run a business fixing Apple. There's not enough money in it. My business focuses on the most opportunity to get business. And since there are more Windows-based computers than any other kind of computer in the world, the opportunity is greater in that environment. That's why most viruses are written for Windows. So because of that, it has nothing to do with whether an OS is good or bad. It is totally irrelevant. It doesn't matter. It's just about where is the potential to have the most amount of customers. And so for that, I focus all my time and energy on Windows and Windows-based hardware. And so for me to then turn around and do something that goes against all of my decades of experience would be unwise, an unwise investment of my time that could be spent earning money trying to figure something out where I have no potential to earn much. But there are other YouTube channels that are more technical that focus on things like Hackintosh and Linux. You'll never see that. Mark my words, you will never ever see that on my channel. This will always be a channel to embrace and encourage novices to enter into the technical world. And if they grow to a point where their interest is in Linux or creating a Hackintosh, then I congratulate them on their graduation from my channel into other channels that are more technical. So that's the goal here. It's not a diapers to death channel. I just can't cover everything from the very beginning all the way to the most technical. But what I found on YouTube is there's plenty of overkill on the technical stuff, and what's missing is the stuff for the average computer owner. The vast majority of computer owners, this stuff is like watching another language. If you don't know what people are talking about, it's like watching a foreign language. And my goal on my channel is to make all of this information understandable to the average computer user who's interested. The only battle I really face is making people interested. All right, did that install update? It looks like it's done. ready to restart. Let's do it. What happened to the desktop that had the failing RAID? The video was already completed that concluded that. You can go back into my video library and watch that. What else do we have in here? Acronis did an update today. Oh, that's interesting. I'll have to watch for that. Thanks for letting me know. I think they're on, the last version I downloaded was like 10.840, I think was the version. So I don't know what it is now. I look like the guy behind the fence, Wilson, on Home Improvement. Howdy, neighbor. Do you know that show was supposed to take place in Royal Oak, Michigan, which is a neighboring city to where I'm originally from, a suburb of Detroit called Oak Park, Michigan. So I could really relate to Home Improvement, both my love of cars and the fact that it took place in a relatively unknown city, a suburb of Detroit that most people outside of Detroit have never heard of before. Tim Allen is from, well, Tim Allen Dick is his name, but Tim Allen is from Michigan. Can't remember, I think he's from Bloomfield or Birmingham, I can't remember. My kind of guy. Oh, more power. Oh. Did I miss a contribution? It looks like I did. Well, I guess not. I guess I got them all. Just scrolling up to see. Looks like I got them all. Kevin Blackwell contributed $25. Apparently I missed it. I don't know where it is. Oh, there it is. Oh, thank you, Kevin. Thank you for contributing to the channel. Thank you so much. Hey, maybe at the end of this stream I can get that new head for the tripod. That would be nice. Hard to part with $150 for that part. It's about this big, but what are you going to do? All right, let's go back and check Windows Update again. Anytime you do Windows Update, you want to repeat the process until it says you're up to date. Wow, this thing's quick. Windows Update. So this probably happened because of the update that we just installed. So what I'm going to do is rerun the utility again. And you need to know that you may have to do that. You may have to run that utility more than once. And I've left it in the download directory so I can run it again. But you'll see checking for updates is working. I'm going to go ahead and close it though. I'm going to go back to my download directory and rerun that utility again. That's the one thing, is that a Windows Update could potentially break that fix because Microsoft marketing is very, very aggressive. So let me go into the downloads directory. I'm going to block the view because there's probably files in here that are personal. I'm going to sort it by date so I can scroll down to the last file downloaded. And there we go. So we're just going to run the WFUC setup. We'll do a repair, quick repair. I've seen this happen before. It's really not a big deal. And it seems like once I do it the second time, I've never seen it come up a third time. But again, there's no control I have over Windows Updates disabling it. And then the people that code the WFUC, you'll see it's got numerous revisions of the, and that's because they keep Microsoft does something and they have to counter it with with an updated version to bypass Microsoft's crippling of your system. So it is free. It only takes a minute. It's a little bit of a hassle, but it's that, or you go to Windows 10. This is an office where they're not ready yet for Windows 10. They don't really have a choice. Well, they have a choice if they want to spend the money. They're not ready to yet. So They're just not ready. So this Microsoft is really interrupting several of my customers' productivity when we install new hardware. But this is temporary. Like I said, they will be on Windows 10 before January 2020. So we just have to be a little patient and wait for that to come to fruition. And then I'm going to take the driver disk out. We're done with the driver disk. People that don't like Windows 10, I feel sorry for those people because they're just going to get left behind. The whole world is moving to Windows 10, and if you choose not to move with the world will move. The world's still going to move with or without you. You may choose to change platforms altogether to go to Linux or go to Mac, but if you're going to stay with Microsoft, you will have to run Windows 10, or you will eventually have your identity stolen and have your computer and data encrypted and completely destroyed. So it's just a matter of time, and it matters not to me which you choose. I just feel sorry for those who say, for example, I don't want to get that Intel patch, that Microsoft patch, because I don't want my computer to slow down by 30%, which it doesn't do. But there are people who think this way. So instead, their computer gets infected by the thing the patch fixes, and they have their password stolen and all this other stuff because they didn't patch, because they didn't want the performance hit that wasn't going to happen anyway. That's how this information is so dangerous. There are people who say, I don't want to get the flu shot because I heard some friends of mine who got the flu shots got sick after their shot. So they don't get the flu shot, and instead they get full-blown flu, which in some cases kills people. There's people that say, I don't want Windows 10, I don't like it, so I'll stay with Windows 7, but once Windows 7 support ends, you will be open to more threats every single minute of the day once support ends. So as you continue to run Windows 7, eventually, let's say nothing bad happens to you, eventually there'll be no antivirus software that works with it. Eventually, when you buy any new hardware, printers, scanners, those sorts of things, video capture cards, there will be no Windows 7 support, no drivers, and no way to make it work. And you will eventually be so far behind everybody else that when you finally embrace the latest operating system, it will be so foreign to you, you'll have to start learning all over again. And I wouldn't want to be in that position. It's best to try and keep up with the technology. It's going to move forward with or without you, and neither myself nor the technology nor Microsoft cares if you want to go along for the ride or be left behind. They don't care. That's your choice. But do understand the choice you're making is one that only affects you in a very much a negative way that I don't think people are fully thinking through. But it is your choice to make. It is your freedom of your choice to make those decisions. And you will deal with the benefits and the consequences of your decisions. I won't. Nobody else, just you. This is all updated. There's no more important updates available. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open the browser, and I'm going to go to Snappy Driver Installer. And boy, this person really opens a lot of... I don't think they did that on purpose, so I'm going to have to fix that. I'm just going to go to Snappy Driver Installer, right here. First link that comes up on oops, sorry, it's not the first link. Let's close that. Looks like I'm on Yahoo search. I don't like that. So we're going to go into the settings of Google Chrome here. And I am going to change that search. There we go. Now, let's try that again. Bring this up. I'm going to go to Snappy Driver Installer. Very first link, sditool.org. Hit the download button, and I just want the light version. It's only a 4 meg download. There's the 4 meg download. I'm going to now go into my download directory and extract all the files. Now these are the extracted files here. There's one called sdiauto.bat. Double click on that, click run. I can close, well, we'll click yes and then close this. Allow access. Download indexes only. There was a window open behind here. I just wanted to close that. There we go. So it's downloaded 0 out of 12.9 megabytes. So we're going to wait for that to download. It does take a little bit of time. Just depends on how many people are. It's basically using a BitTorrent to do this. The only thing I won't install, because I found my customers will have blue screens, is they're going to offer me an update to Intel's USB 3.0 extensible host driver. I don't install anything related to USB 3 because it's causing blue screens, random blue screens on my customers' computers. But all the other drivers that it offers, I will install. They've been pretty solid. So here's the list that comes up, and you'll see there's our Intel graphics that wasn't on our driver disk, which is clearly available right here. And I don't like to install too many things at once, so I think I'm just going to do, I'm not going to do the Intel driver yet. I want to do all the chipset stuff first. So we'll just put a check in all these boxes. I can't check them both. You see, you can only do one or the other on these. Are you guys seeing that? Yeah, you can see it. And we'll just put checks in all these boxes. One there, one there, one there, one there, one there. Now there's a LAN driver update. I'm just going to do the chipset. Hit install. And then right up here it's going to say downloading. It's got to download 184 megabytes for the chipset drivers. And just be patient and let it run. And while that's happening, let's see what's going on in the chat. Patrick Rousseau has contributed $10, says, just built another PC yesterday. Now I have 20 computers I used to rip my massive 8,000 DVD collection to my HT PC I built a few months ago. That's intense, Patrick. You're so busy ripping your movies. How do you have any time to watch any movies? But thank you. Thank you for the contribution and your support. I do really appreciate it. Carrie, do you prefer your PC with a local account or with a Microsoft Live account? All accounts, all the computers I set up are set up with local accounts only. Somebody suggests that there are systems that won't run Windows 10. Windows 10 requires less resources than Windows 7 or Windows 8. So if you're running Windows 7 or Windows 8, which are the only two supported operating systems right now, apart from Windows 10 from Microsoft, then all of those systems will run Windows 10 better and faster. Because Windows 7 requires a certain amount of resources, Windows 8 requires even more resources, and Windows 10 requires, for the very first time ever, you feel free to Google this and verify what I'm telling you is true. Windows 10 is the first operating system from Microsoft ever that requires less resources to run than previous operating systems. Traditionally, they only move in one direction, but in this case, the statement that a computer running Windows 7 or 8 would not be powerful enough to run Windows 10 is somebody who doesn't have all their facts and has not done the research and has made an assumption or has been misinformed by people on the internet. After all, you saw it on YouTube, so it must be true. I mean, a guy made a video about it, so why educate yourself any further than that? Because everybody knows you've got to be qualified to have a YouTube channel. I mean, you got to have an internet connection and a camera. So clearly everything they tell you is true. Sorry, was I being sarcastic? But you're a guy on a YouTube channel? Exactly my point. You have to do your own research before you go telling people stuff, or you just leading people in the wrong direction. It's the blind leading the blind. It doesn't take much time to go and use Google and just do some research. Look for reputable sources, reputable news outlets, reputable publications, or from companies making statements themselves. If Microsoft releases a statement, you know that's a true statement. If Intel releases a statement, It might be slated or, to one side or the other, but it's true. So when somebody makes a bold statement that's not true, that doesn't have any official source, how do you know? How do you know what you're hearing is not made up from somebody's imagination versus an actual official source? So anybody that wants to make bold statements like that should provide an initial source. And if they don't, then you need to go and look for it if it bothers you that much. But yeah, Windows 10 will run on anything running Windows 7 and 8, and it'll run faster. So hope I cleared up that for now. I'm sure I'll be talking about it again tomorrow. Do you have a recommendation for a hardware tester software? There's no such thing. No software can accurately test your hardware. It's just not possible, because failed hardware could result in software test results being false. So there's no such thing. Not reliably. I mean, there are companies that make memory tests and chipset tests and things like that, but they're not 100% accurate. And ultimately, in my opinion, they're a waste of time and a waste of money. They help perhaps guide you to kind of give you some clues or hints, but and many companies that sell these products would have you believe that their product is capable of this, but it doesn't exist. It never has existed. As far as I can tell, it would be impossible for the software requires hardware to run properly for the software to run properly. So if the hardware is not running properly, how can the software then, you understand? How do you change a tire on a moving car? It's just, think about it. Installation completed, system restart required, then it changes and updates it. Those updates are not available anymore. So we're going to close this out and we're going to restart. I like to restart in between driver updates, and the reason I do that is if any one of these driver updates causes an error, I will know exactly which one it was. If I just pick all the drivers and the system then blue screens or it won't boot anymore, I don't know which one caused it. So I do one group at a time to minimize the, first of all, if I have a problem, and to know where the problem came from. Man, I love how fast this boots. I need one of these for me. Are you kidding me? All right, let me go back to my download directory, which is in here somewhere, and back up to the Snappy Driver Installer program. Once again, back to sdiauto.bat. Click Run, close that, click Yes. It's going to scan again. And, come on. Everywhere I set the mouse, it brings up more information. Now I can do the Intel driver. We'll do that one all by itself. It's 1.25 gigabyte download for that one Intel graphics driver. So just be patient, let it update. Looks like Brian's taking off. Have a good night, Brian. Thanks for joining us. Always good to see you. Bill Leatherland is telling Brytech he's a lightweight because they're both located in England. And Bill says, it's not that late. Come on, you can stay up. That's hilarious. Do you have a preference for a PWM fan controller? I don't believe in fan controllers. This isn't 2002 anymore. So just plug your fans onto your motherboard and let your motherboard BIOS control your fans. If you have more fans than your motherboard has headers, then you're putting too many fans in your system and you need to start taking fans out. Adding more fans doesn't just necessarily automatically cool your system down more. All fans do is move air. Once the air is moving at a certain amount of pace, it won't improve any more than that. Bill Gates has famously said that he doesn't eat at fancy restaurants. Basically, they asked Bill Gates a long, long time ago when he was first getting rich why he was still flying coach and not first class. And he said, you know, I'm not a particularly big guy. I don't need the bigger seat. I'm not going to get there any sooner. And what I've realized is once you've made a certain amount of money, you don't eat any better. The food only gets so good and it doesn't get any better than that. Once you reach a certain pinnacle of wealth, then you get everything the same as everybody else who's reached that minimum amount of wealth. And once you go well beyond that, as he has done, nothing changes. So in that sense, somebody's saying Bill Gates also said no one ever needs more than 640K of memory. Bill Gates never said that, and it's unfortunate that that is one of those things that goes around the internet and continues to be propagated by people who jump in the chat rooms and continue to say things like that are completely, find me a source. You cannot find a source for that. Basically, fan controllers, the same thing. Once you have a certain number of fans, your system's only going to cool so much. All you're doing at that point is you're actually adding heat, not only because of the fan motors generating heat, but because the power supply has to deliver that extra power. It's not a lot of power, but if there's a lot of fans and it's in a confined space, it does add up and it goes against what you're trying to accomplish. If your motherboard has 3 fan headers, then you should have 3 fans. If you have a case that has special fan controllers built into it, then of course you can accommodate that particular case. Although in most situations, in most instances, you only need to have a rear exhaust fan, whether that's on the back or on the top. You don't need both. If you have a graphics card, you might want to blow air over that graphics card, whether that's from the side or from the front. That's it. That's all you need, with very few exceptions. Let me come back around here and take a look at how we're doing. Downloaded, we're about halfway through the download, about 52%. What's the average temp the computer should have? I would say if you're not overclocking, the most you should see should be in the 80 degrees Celsius range at the maximum. If you're hitting above 80, then you might want to look at a different cooling solution. Not adding more fans, but changing your CPU fan, heatsink and fan, or perhaps reseating it and reapplying thermal compound, which may have, aged over time depending on how old it is. But adding more fans is rarely going to make a big difference in your cooling. It might make a degree or 2 Celsius at most. The most important fans are the CPU cooling fan, the power supply fan, and your video card fan. And those are already built into those units. So any additional fans you add can help a little bit, and then adding more on top of that helps even less. And at some point of diminishing returns actually starts to hurt you. Malcolm Crab has contributed £2 and says, have a few cans of Coke on me, loving the stream. Thank you, Malcolm. I think I will. If your GPU, which is not a CPU, I'm talking about a CPU, you should be looking at a max of around 80 degrees centigrade. If you're hitting 81, 82, nothing to worry about. But if it continues to grow and it's getting closer and closer to 90, you need to find a different cooling solution, probably a different heatsink and fan for your CPU. As for your graphics card, the graphics card, you should be fine all the way up to 100 degrees Celsius, even sometimes above that. They pretty much take care of themselves. You can take the graphics card apart to reapply thermal compound. You can't really change the fan. There are some cards you can put, modify to liquid cooling, but we get more advanced than I want to get on this channel for doing things like that. For the most part, I don't think you should be paying attention to how hot your computer's running. I think people who do that are bored with nothing to do and have a lot of time to squander. If your computer is not operating in the way that it should and you're looking to find out why, that should lead you to checking your temps. But just looking at temps because it's something to do is a waste of time. If you're not having any problems, why would you go looking for problems? It just doesn't make sense to me. But I'm very busy and I have a lot of work to do. So I come from a different perspective than a lot of you watching. I've got people with real problems with computers that don't work and businesses that can't run. I don't sit around looking at somebody's computer, running it for hours and hours and hours, hoping I can find a problem. If they bring it back to the customer, which is the best test that you can give it, simply return the computer back to the customer. If the customer calls with a complaint, you have to address it. If the customer does not call with a complaint, it's fixed. There's nothing more to it than that. Let's see how we're doing over here. We're installing the graphics driver right now. And then this is a Windows update notification that updates were installed, and it gives us a list of what it's installed, and we'll click OK there, just to remove that message. Do you advertise or do you get your customers by word of mouth? My business is a private business, and so customers that have to know somebody who knows me, and then I have to talk with the customer to find out, what their budget and expectations are. I don't just take any customer like Best Buy. I don't do that. Customers have to be. I have to make sure I'm able to help them that their reasonable expectations and budget are within reason. If they're not, I simply decline and let them know that I'm not going to be able to meet their needs, and they won't be happy, and they should look somewhere else. It's more important to me to have a happy customer than to have money, which is not a very common attitude in this business. Most businesses are just take your money and they don't care if you like it, the work they do or you don't. For me, I would rather not have your business if I feel like this is going to be a headache later on. This is somebody who's going to be constantly calling me. This is somebody who is lonely and wants somebody to talk to. And they're going to think I'm a jerk because I'm so busy and I have 25 people trying to talk to me at once that I can't make time for them. And they're going to think I'm rude without any consideration of the fact that all these other people are pulling on me from other, hey, I need you over here. I need you over here. And then random people, strangers on the internet, are reaching out to me in email. And it is bombarded with just everybody wants a piece. And so I have to make sure that the people that take care of me are my first priority, that I take care of them. And if you can sometimes tell when somebody's going to be one of those customers that just, is going to be a pain, I just don't want to go down that road. There's not enough money in the world, in my opinion, to deal with that kind of stress and mental torment. They can go somewhere else. So I don't have a yellow page ad. You can't just call me up randomly. There is only one of me. This is not a big corporation with a bunch of techs. I'm the guy who does the work. There's only so many hours in a day. There's only so much work I can do. So I can be selective over which jobs I pick and which jobs I turn away. And I'm very fortunate to be in that position, don't get me wrong. And luckily I've had enough customers that are businesses that see the value in what I offer, that they primarily make up about 70% of my business. And then the other 30% are little repairs once in a while. I hear from somebody once a year maybe. And they're a good customer, they're a nice person, they don't need me very often, but I could not sustain a business that way. I would be out of business if that's the kind of customers I had. Just completely unsustainable. It looks like, well, we're still installing. Almost done. Does SDI have a portable version? Yes, that's what I'm running. I'm running the portable. I didn't install anything. The only thing I'm installing are the drivers. The SDI, the Snappy driver installer does not install, thank goodness. It's just a portable version exists. Do you also suffer from the YouTube demonetization? Yes. Yeah, most of my live streams get flagged as not advertiser friendly, and I have to refute them. And it's gotten to the point now, it's happening so often that the minute I hit the refute button, the decision's instantly reversed. Like they must have me in a database that it's weird that you wouldn't put me in a database that prevents me from being demonetized. But they put me apparently in a database that says if he refutes demonetization, automatically enable it. And don't get me started on that. Installation completed, system restart required. If I click on that, you'll see that that driver option goes away. It's no longer in the list. And I can close this and choose restart. When I restart, I expect the resolution, everything should look smaller. I expect the resolution to be higher. What it will be, I don't know, but that's what I expect it to be. Let me just be clear. I hope your customers appreciate that you are in demand. Well, I wouldn't be in demand if I didn't have customers. It's kind of it's reciprocal, right? I hope that they appreciate me, and I hope that they know that I appreciate them. Without them, I don't have a business. Without viewers, I have a YouTube channel, but do you really have a YouTube channel if nobody watches it? It's like, does a tree make a sound if it falls in the forest if no one's around to hear it? It's one of those kind of situations. So it's definitely reciprocal. Yeah. Resolution definitely went up quite a bit. Everything's much, much smaller. So that means that is the right driver, Snappy Driver Installer did not let us down. Let me go back into Snappy Driver Installer and we'll continue with installing some more drivers. Although these drivers, the rest of them aren't necessary. I mean, why not do it? It's kind of my feeling. Let's see, we'll go here, click Run. Close that. There we go. And now you'll see that window's a lot smaller now than it was. We've got the Realtek LAN driver. There's a SATA driver, and there's an audio driver. I wouldn't normally do all three of these at once, but I'm feeling confident, and I hope I don't regret it. So now I've hit install. We're going to hit and download that. That's 428 megs it has to download, so it's going to be a little bit. And I'm expecting an Amazon package, which I think is what the doorbell was. It wasn't what I was expecting. It was from Amazon, but I was expecting some other stuff. All right, so let's see how things are going over here. We're at 32% of the download of that driver, of that series of drivers we're going to install. Almost ready. Once these drivers are done, I want to make sure Windows is activated. It may need to reactivate Office and reactivate Windows. That should happen automatically through the internet. If it doesn't, we'll have to call Microsoft and explain that we've changed the motherboard out, and they'll give us our activation for that. I think there was Quicken or QuickBooks that may or may not work. The customer will have to deal with that. I have nothing to do with Quicken or any Intuit products. I will not support them. Intuit makes it virtually impossible to support their products. So any customers that use those products, if they have any problems with those products, they have to contact those products support directly. That's just the only way I can maintain any sort of free time, not free time, but I cannot have customers consuming my time because they purchase software I didn't recommend. They're having problems with that software. They're welcome to purchase anything they want, but certain things they'll have to go to the source because my hands are tied, because the source, as in the case of Intuit, locks their product down in such a way that it's virtually impossible, unless you're authorized through Intuit, to do anything meaningful with their software. Someone's asking about Windows 2000 and Windows XP. I will not answer any questions about 2000 or XP because I think it's extremely foolish and unwise to be using an operating system that old. It's time to move on and let those things go. Newer computers are faster and cheaper. My time has value. I assume your time has value. Anything you do on Windows XP or 2000 will take 10 to 100 times longer to process than a modern PC today. So not only are you consuming a whole bunch of time, but you are, when you're said and done, if you plug it into the internet, you're just waiting to be a victim of crypto ransomware, crypto viruses, identity theft. The list goes on and on and on. I will not condone that. I will not encourage it. You may do whatever you want, but I will not sit here and hold your hand and permit you to do it with my guidance. Minimum, you should be running Windows 7, Windows 8, or Windows 10. If you will not run those for any reason on older hardware, learn to use Linux. There are Linux channels here on YouTube, as well as many sites that can walk you through how to install it and how to use it. A good portion of China is using Windows XP and IE6, aren't they? I don't know. I don't live in China. But I know a lot of people in China can't go to the websites everybody else in the world can go to. Same with people in North Korea. And when I think of China, I don't think of a bunch of people living in luxury. And I'm sure that's the example I would want to use. There's no justification that I will ever condone the use of an obsolete operating system. If you can justify it in your mind, you certainly have the right to do that, but I will not condone it. There's nothing you can say that I would condone it. Somebody in the chat wants to argue with me about VPNs in China. It's not about VPNs, it's not about access, it's about wealth. It's about setting an example of prosperity. China is not an example of prosperity by any stretch of the means, nor is India. Well, there is some prosperity in those countries. It's the difference between the poor and the rich is vast. There's a lot more people living in poverty than there are people that are wealthy. So to say this is how they do things in China as though that's your measure for making it okay, to me is close to insanity to find any kind of logic in that. So if you want to use XP, you're welcome to do it. I won't help you with it. I will not help you walk off the edge of a bridge. But I can't stop you from doing it if you want to. All right, there's the USB 3.1, USB 3.0 extensible host controller and root hub. These two drivers I do not install because in my experience they cause blue screen errors. So that's it. That's all we use on Snappy Driver Installer. Let me check the, you know what, let's go ahead and restart it, and then I'll check the activation status. If you're looking for any sort of build advice, if you're looking to build a computer, you're not sure which parts to purchase, on the Facebook fan page, there's volunteers available to help you. You have to discuss what your needs are, what your expectations are. How are you going to use the computer? What do you expect the computer to do? Is noise a factor? Is weight a factor? Is it something that has to be portable, or is it something you want a window to show off lights and show off the insides? Or you want a really tight budget, you just want the bare minimum to just do the basic thing? There's a lot of information that has to be collected before anybody can offer you any advice that means anything to you. And one of the volunteers at the Facebook fan page who does just that is in the chat right now. And that's Catherine Anna Hauserman. And Catherine is more than happy to provide you a parts list, but she needs a lot of information from you. She needs to know first and foremost, how much do you want to spend? If you're going to spend $500 or below, we can't help you. There's just no way you can build a machine that's of any decency at $500. The operating system alone is $100, and a case and power supply are going to set you back $100. That only leaves $300 for the motherboard, CPU, RAM, and storage. It's not going to cut it. You could start at around $700. That would be about the base minimum for a basic machine. So that would be, absolute base. If you have less than $700, I would say go on Craigslist or eBay or somewhere and buy something used, because you get more for your money. Or save your money until you have at least $700. If you want to add a graphics card, if you're going to play games, you need a 1050, 1060, 1080. 1080, $600 all by itself, or $700. You can get a 1050 for around $150. So you'll see your budget goes very, very quick if what you're looking to do is game, or you're looking for that kind of level. So as long as you're not too budget restricted, we can certainly put a parts list together that meets your needs and expectations. But since we can't read your mind, we need all of that information. And you can either talk to Catherine directly here in the chat right now, or you can go to the Facebook fan page and put in a formal request and then handle it the ordinary way. And Catherine will do her best to put parts lists together for you. And thank you, Catherine, for doing that for us. Everything's loaded. We know there's no more updates. Let me just check to see if Windows is activated. I'll go to System. It says we have 3 days to activate. So we'll click on Activate Now. Activate Windows Online. This may take a few minutes. Activation was successful. That's exactly what I was expecting. If it did not succeed, we would have an option to call a toll-free number available in pretty much every country in the world. There's a different number that's toll-free, and then we would do that over the telephone. They will always approve it over the telephone unless you have a pirated copy of Windows. As long as your version of Windows is legit, they will always activate it. Let's go to Microsoft Word. That may need to be reactivated as well. I'm not sure. Let's just try it and see. They're running Word 2010 here. Yep, activation came up. I want to activate over the internet. We'll click Next, and ideally that will happen without any hassle. It says that Office cannot be activated because the software has already been activated the maximum number of times. This is simply not true. This is a blanket statement to discourage piracy. So what we have to do is call Microsoft. There is an activation number for Microsoft Office. It's part of a Microsoft knowledge base article. And there's a long code that we punch into the phone. You can download an app to do it, or you can type it in on the phone keypad. Either way, this is not a problem. I'm not going to do it right now because it involves a whole bunch of, it's like 36 random letters. Well, they seem random letters and numbers. And then I think it's more than 36. I think it's like 52. And then they read you back 52. You have to type them in. So I need to take care of that before I give it back to the customer. But that's the upgrade pretty much complete. I'm going to do a little tiny bit of improvement on the cable management. Not much. I'm going to tie up this extra power cable that used to go to the solid state drive. I'm going to tie up this SATA cable that's going to the optical drive, and that's pretty much all there is to it. So does anybody have any final questions for me, or am I forgetting anything? Let me know now, please. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Any questions about Acronis were covered in full detail earlier on in this live broadcast, and the video will be made available to view after YouTube processes it. So if you have questions about Acronis and you missed it earlier on, I strongly encourage you to watch the recorded version of this. That'll be available in a few hours, and all that information is there for you rather than just keep repeating myself. Alistair Gregg says, Carrie, the advice the guys on the fan page give out is superb. Can I say a big thank you to them for the help I have received from them? Absolutely. We have a handful of hand-picked volunteers at the Facebook fan page. We're not accepting any applications at this time for any more volunteers, although we appreciate your enthusiasm, and they do a fantastic job. Catherine is our latest addition to the administrators or moderators at the fan page, and she is just cranking it out, which is just fantastic. She's not only doing build advice, she's answering people's technical questions, and she's just, one of the frustrations I have sometimes is I don't agree with some of the advice that some of my admins give out. So at this time now, the admins that I had issues with, they're gone. And I haven't really had to correct Catherine at all. She's just bang on point every time. So I'd hire her if I could. I really would. She's that good. Sharia donated $1. Give her a shout out. I guess I didn't see it. I'm sorry. Anybody who contributes is going to get a shout out. So if I miss it, please let me know. Sharia Grover contributed $1. Well, thank you, Shar. I'm not sure how to pronounce the name. Sharia. Sorry, I don't mean to butcher your name. Bill Leatherland wants to know if I've been watching the new Grand Tour because he knows I'm a big fan of the British Top Gear. I don't know what it is, but the new Grand Tour feels very scripted. It doesn't feel as genuine and authentic as the original Top Gear. I watched everything but the last 2 episodes of season 1. I keep trying to go back and rewatch it, but it's just so stupid. I just can't. So I watched season 2, episode 1, and it was pretty good, but it still felt really rehearsed. And I haven't seen any more than that. Anytime they do the military vehicles, I'm just bored out of my mind. I'd like to see really exclusive cars or everyday cars. I really like the ingenuity of the testing that they come up with, or they used to come up with, like racing a car from 0 to 60 on the ground versus dropping a car from a distance from a helicopter and see which one hits the finish line first. That's fascinating testing to me. Testing a Prius's mileage versus a BMW M3 or M5 on a track where the Prius has to keep up with the M5 at 90 plus miles an hour. And then they find out the Prius only got 13 miles to the gallon and the M5 got like 18 miles to the gallon, proving it's not what you drive, but how you drive it. Brilliant testing procedures. Tests where they have a 600 horsepower car and wonder how many men on a tug of war would it take to beat the car. And they got a Scottish tug of war team hooked up to the rear bumper of the car, and the car couldn't move. It only, like 8 men held this car back from moving forward. And the lesson there was, it doesn't matter how much horsepower you've got, if the contact area of your tire is only about this much on the pavement. If you can't put that horsepower down onto the pavement, it doesn't do you any good to have more horsepower. And he proved it. So these are the kind of tests that really drew me into Top Gear. And they're really not doing that on the Grand Tour anymore. It's more about, scripted entertainment. And unfortunately, it's just not what it used to be. I'll still go back and watch when there's time. It's not like I can't wait for the next episode, obviously. I like Fast and Loud because I feel that's real. What you see is really happening, and they run into real problems. It doesn't feel scripted to me, although clearly there's parts of it that are scripted. But it overall feels very genuine and authentic, and that's what I'm drawn to, and that's why I make my YouTube videos as genuine and authentic as I can, because there's too much fakery, if that's a word, on television and on YouTube. With video effects and CGI, it's hard to tell what's real anymore. And so much marketing that manipulates a person's appearance and what they can and cannot say in order to ensure that they are in demand and can demand a high salary. So they have handlers that control which questions can be asked to them. If you go on the Tonight Show and you're you know, a big-time actor, an A-list actor, there will be questions you won't even know about it, probably as an actor. Your agent or your handler will give the producer of the show a list of questions or approve the questions beforehand, may even give the host some ideas of, you know, ask him about his dog or ask him about his recent trip, to start a conversation. And that prevents sort of a how can I explain it? You don't want to offend anybody if you're that A-list celebrity. You want everybody to like you, and you want to make sure you're in demand. Saying the wrong thing, as Mel Gibson has learned, as Alec Baldwin has learned, can damage your career, and it can be very hard to recover from that. You know, David Hasselhoff had that whole issue. So they have handlers that very carefully contrive an image for them and control that as much as possible. And so, you know, you got to realize some of what you're watching is real, some of what you're watching is fake. Apart from science fiction, I like to watch what's real, and so that's what I like to create. Just looking through some final comments. I386 contributed $2. Thank you for that contribution. Do you need to have a business license to start fixing computers from home? It depends on where you live. You'll have to talk to either an attorney or a business chamber of commerce, something along those lines in your area, to determine what the rules are for where you live. There's not one rule that fits everybody. Not even in the same state. Jurisdictions change from county to county, sometimes city to city, and what's required. The kind of work you do and the amount of money that you generate from it. There may be certain minimums that you're required to hit in order to qualify, or not qualify, but be required. Obviously, they'll sell anybody a license, but you may not be required to have a license unless you're doing a certain minimum amount of annual revenue. So it may not be something you have to worry about until you start getting successful. But you certainly want to talk to a business attorney or, like I say, perhaps someone in your city council to get the information on that. You could even Google it for your local city ordinances. But I don't know where you live, and I don't know what your city ordinances is, and I'm not a lawyer, so I could not tell you. Some people have businesses where they actually lose money. And it's my understanding in the United States, if you have a business where you've lost money 3 years in a row, they will no longer recognize you as a business, but as a hobby, and you can no longer qualify as a business. You would have to then shut that business down and create another one. But I could be completely misled on that, so you know, do your own research. That's serious stuff, and it's not my forte. Looks like I might have missed a couple of contributions here. I'm trying to find them. I don't see them, but I'm told $69 Juan Jose contributed $2. I don't see it, but thank you for the contribution. And Shane Davies, who contributed £2, wants to know, what do you think about the Panzer Max case? I'd never heard of it, so I don't know. There's more case manufacturers today than there's ever been in the history of computer hardware. So when people just bring up random manufacturers and models, I have no idea. Everything I show on my channel is real. The cases I use are ordered by customers or paid for by customers. There's a rare exception where a case manufacturer will send me a case to showcase on my channel, but that case does get used for a real customer. And of course, I always disclose that. I have no desire to have any opinion on any case that I don't use in a build. What was your opinion of the Ryzen chip? My opinion of the Ryzen was that I was pleasantly surprised at just how fast it was. I knew it was 6 cores, but it didn't really hit me until I started running Prime 95 and I saw all 6 cores running and I went, holy smokes, that's a lot of cores. And then when I tried to run some other multitask, well, Prime 95 is hitting the CPU at 100% and the computer responded without any hesitation. Even my Intel chips don't do that. So that impressed me. And the cooler that they're shipping with the Ryzen 5, the 1600, the Ryzen 5 1600 that we installed, that's a massive cooler that installs solidly and it runs quietly. So bang on all, firing on all cylinders on the Ryzen, very impressed. I still have clients that absolutely will not even consider AMD. They're loyal to Intel, and I will always give the customer what the customer wants. But I have no problem, and I never have had a problem recommending AMD. It's all about what the customer's needs and expectations are. So for a customer like this, let's say we went with AMD Ryzen, we would have to then take the money we saved to invest in a video card, which would defeat any savings. In fact, would probably end up costing us more than sticking with Intel, where we've got the GPU built into the graphics chip, built into the CPU. So this customer does not need a separate graphics card. That's one more thing we don't have to worry about going wrong. It's one more expense we don't have to have. And it makes the build easier. And the customer is using it for business, meaning they're primarily using Microsoft Office, email, web browsing. They don't need a discrete graphics card. They don't need that. Even if they're running 2 or 3 monitors, we plug right in and we're good to go. So it's just not appropriate for some customers. It doesn't mean it's bad. It'd be no different than if I walked into a clothing store and I saw a shirt I didn't like. That doesn't mean somebody else isn't going to like it. It doesn't mean it's low quality. It doesn't mean that it's, worthless. It just doesn't suit my needs, but it'll suit somebody else's needs. And if they want to buy it, it's fine. It's kind of like that. Didn't AMD say that there are Ryzen with built-in graphics coming? I don't care what's coming. It doesn't help me at all. Yeah, let me tell my customer, I can build that computer for you that you need yesterday. I can build that in some point in the future if and when AMD ever releases that chip, or we can put the Intel chip in now. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the future, and I'm not talking about the past. I'm talking about today. When customers call, they need help today, and I can only offer them solutions that are available today. So if and when AMD offers a Ryzen with integrated graphics, perhaps it'll be time to revisit that option for those customers. But until then, regardless, I have customers that are only going to buy Intel, and it's not about anything other than what the customer wants. So if you're really passionate about certain parts, then those are the parts you should order. Doesn't mean anybody else should order them. It's just right for you. That's the whole point of building a computer, is we all don't have to be the same. We get to express ourselves. David Martinez has contributed $2. Ooh, excuse me. So thank you, David. Thank you for your contribution. He says, awesome video. Thank you, David. Carrie, send me a message if you ever come to Norway, and I'll happily give you a free stay in Wintertown. And I can't pronounce the cities in there. I would love to go to Norway. It's on the bucket list. I really want to go to England, but Norway would be probably the second place I really want to go. When I say England, I mean the UK in general. I'm talking Wales. I'm talking Ireland, Scotland, Cotswolds. Oh, I'd love to be in the Cotswolds right now. So the previous AMD chips, the FX series, they don't impress me at all. Their performance is lacking severely behind Intel. And they do have graphics chips, but that defeats the point. We're talking about the AMD Ryzen. I'm trying and stay focused, guys. It's not a competition. This is not a contest. I'm not trying to outwit anybody. We're talking about AMD Ryzen in its current state today compared with Intel in its current state today and the needs of individual customers and their current needs today. So it's not a game. You're not proving you're more clever than somebody else by diverting the topic to something unrelated. I'm just responding to some comments. The people are like, what's he talking about? FX does not have onboard. Which ones ever do? Some of the AMD ones do. That's, initially some of the Intel chips did and some of the Intel chips didn't. And I think all the Intel chips have onboard graphics. As far as I know, all the current. So you got to be careful what you say on the internet because people will pick apart every word you say. Well, no, the Intel chip that's sold today that was created 5 years ago but still sold today. I'm not talking about that. It makes it so hard to have a conversation when every single word you pick out loud, somebody has to disassemble and reassociate and say, well, there's an exception to what you said because they refuse to understand or to accept the relevance and exercise judgment of the meaning behind the context of what you've said. It is a strange phenomenon. This did not happen in the 80s or 90s. This only happened when the internet came out. And it's almost like just an excuse to argue with somebody or to prove you're smarter than them. And it is one of the most annoying traits people exhibit on the internet. It's not a contest. I'm sending you some cheesecake. You can keep it. Thank you. You can keep your cheesecake. All right, well, we are losing steam on the stream. Looks like we were up over 700 viewers. Now we're at 552, and we've pretty much wrapped it up. I like to take the end of the stream here and just address any questions because I'm so preoccupied doing the build. I don't often see a lot of the questions that come by. They scroll off the screen long before I've had an opportunity to see them. So I like to give everybody a chance. If you've got a relevant question dealing with what we've done today or anything I've talked about today, this would certainly be the time to ask it if you've asked it earlier and I was unable to respond because I wasn't aware of it. So that's why we're kind of extending the end of this broadcast to give you that opportunity. So if you don't have any, then we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Cottonmouth Killer, North NC, I think that's North Carolina. Thanks for the stream, Carrie. Very informative. Enjoy your evening. Well, thank you. You too. Thank you for the kind words. Do any of your customers want optical drives? Yes, many of my customers still require optical drives, and they're very inexpensive. You pick them up for about $15, so a lot of the customers would just as soon spend the $15 and have it, even if they don't need it. It's not a major investment. They don't need Blu-ray drives, but generally they do need a DVD or CD drive. Carrie, your DIY garage video has over 1 million views. Yes, it reached over 1 million views last year, but thanks for catching up with the rest of us. It's very flattering too. That's the only video I've had reach 1 million views, and it happened, I think it took just over a year to hit 1 million. And that's really, really a source of pride for me. The day it hit 1 million, I mean, I was watching it. What is the best diagnosis software in your opinion? There's no such thing as any diagnosis software that's worthwhile. It just doesn't work. Once again, it's like saying what's the best tire to change on a car that's still in motion? It's irrelevant. We can't change a tire on a car in motion. Failed hardware cannot be reliably diagnosed by a piece of software that requires the hardware to be working for the software to run properly. Some of the software that you'll see me use gives me an idea, but it's not definitive. So things like memtest 86, which is a free utility I've demonstrated numerous times in the past for testing RAM, isn't perfect. I've had memtest86 tell me there's nothing wrong with the RAM, and yet the computer will continue to behave abnormally. And then when I change the RAM out, the computer works. So clearly there was something wrong with the RAM, and memtest86 just wasn't activating the part of the RAM that failed. But most of the time, 80% of the time, it does lead me to bad memory if there's bad memory, but it's just not 100% accurate. No software can be. Nothing replaces human judgment. No computer software at this point of evolution that we're in now replaces human judgment. It's just not there yet. So for the most part, the best way you can diagnose something is by swapping parts out and common sense and human judgment. The other piece of diagnostic software I will use is Crystal Disk Info to give me an overview of the health status of the hard drive. But what I'm most interested in is how many hours are on the hard drive. It's got an odometer on it. And Crystal Disk Info can read that odometer, tell me how many times that drive has been powered on and how many hours it's been on. That's an extremely useful tool to give me an idea if a drive is very old. Even though it may pass the test, based on its age or how many hours are on it, I may recommend a replacement. I'll also run Crystal Diskmark to get an idea of the data transfer rate. So even though a drive may pass a diagnostic test, it still may be performing slowly, whether that's because of something wrong with the drive or simply because of the drive's age compared to a modern drive, would also indicate to me it's time to replace it. So there's really no software that you can reliably count on to diagnose anything. You have to use human judgment, and that's the way it's always been in my entire life. Same goes with those little things you plug into your car. It tells you what's wrong with your car. They still require human judgment to decipher the codes, because certain combinations of codes that'll tell you this is wrong and this is wrong and this is wrong may be nothing more than your gas cap isn't on all the way. So you have to have human judgment to understand that certain codes that appear on the onboard diagnostics may be authentic and true and genuine, and you may see a series of codes that individually are meaningless but together point to a completely different problem. And the same is true with the computer. So you cannot replace education with software. I know the young people today, they pick up their phones, they don't have to know anything today. As long as you have your phone, you can answer pretty much any question. This idea of how do I get around educating myself where I can get a piece of software to do my job for me is a question that I don't really totally, I don't know if you're hearing what you're asking. I would encourage education, not a piece of software to do your job for you. And ultimately, if you want reliability and you want to know what's going on, instead of just taking the word of a strange piece of software, which could be outdated and not compatible with the latest hardware you're testing it on, there's a lot of reasons why their accuracy cannot be counted on any sort of software diagnostic. It can be used, like I say, to help guide you, but it doesn't replace experience in education. Nothing replaces experience in education except experience in education. The build video with your niece. Love the build video with you and your niece. Nice. Well, thank you. Gunnar Sandberg, thank you for the kind words. I had a fun time. My niece and I haven't spent much time together, so it was a unique opportunity for us to have that bonding time and to share my passion of building computers with my niece. You know, what more happiness could you ask for? Carrie, have you received the 100K silver play button from YouTube? Yeah, I displayed that in a video. There's a video where I built a computer for Minecraft. If you watch that video, you'll see me unbox it. I was actually interrupted by UPS during the filming of the video, and I just left it in, and you'll see me unbox it. The silver play button is worthless. It doesn't make my channel any better. I have criticized and given YouTube feedback that they should be rewarding their content creators with camera equipment, memory cards, lighting, green screens, better software. You should be helping your content creators create more content, because that makes them more money, which makes YouTube more money. The silver play button doesn't do anybody any good. And I said, just to be diplomatic, what YouTube should be doing is giving their
The content creators who make them money should be getting points, basically like loyalty points. And then YouTube should have a catalog on how you choose to spend those loyalty points. So if you save them up and you want to get a new camera, or you want to get a new microphone, or you want to get a gimbal or a stabilizer or a tripod head, as we were talking about, different lenses, lights, green screens, software, the list goes on and on and on. And then you could put the silver play button, the gold play button, and then it would require as many points as you would get by getting that many views that you would get in anyway. But at least that lets the content creator decide if they want that useless silver, gold, crystal play button, diamond play button. They're just pointless. They have absolutely no value, and they don't do anything to help anybody. It's just a complete waste of money. That's how I feel about that. What a waste. All right, guys, I think that is going to wrap up the stream. Thank you all so much for joining me. For everybody who's contributed today to the channel, my love goes out to you. Thank you so much. Your support means the world to me. For everybody who's watching, again, thank you for watching. I really appreciate that. I hope that you enjoy the content and hope you will continue to. I have a lot more videos coming out. There's no shortage of ideas. I will say this, if you have an idea for something you'd like to see that is not Linux or Hackintosh, but if there's something you want to see, let me know in the comments below. I mean, I've still got a huge backlog of videos to do, but at least we have a depository where we can put those ideas. When this video becomes live, when it's after I'm done with the live stream and it becomes available as a regular video, in the comments section, if you want to know more details about how I use Acronis or how I clone drives, you want more detail on updating the BIOS, things that you already see me do, but you want more detail on any of the software or tools that I use, please go ahead and leave that in the comments. If you feel there's something that is related to what I do that I haven't done, that isn't Linux or Mac or Hackintosh, and it doesn't involve me having to go out and buy certain parts because you selfishly want to see this case with this motherboard, I don't do that. I don't have the budget for it. And I don't have sponsors to pay for it. So everything you see is real. They're real customer builds that customers are paying for to have done and that I have to support indefinitely. This computer was initially built in 2011 and here we are 7 years later and it's right back on my desk. You're not going to see that on the other tech channels, and I just want you to underscore that that's what you're seeing. Everything is very real, so I don't just get these unreasonable requests. But your feedback is always welcome, and you can just leave it in the comments section once the video is completed. So again, thank you for joining me. I will see you all again very soon. Until then, bye for now.